The text message glowed on my phone screen at 2:17 a.m. Can't stop thinking about tonight. You were amazing. It wasn't from my husband, Mark. It was from his phone, but the words weren't his. The message was meant for someone else, sent to me by mistake. My fingers trembled as I stared at those words in the darkness of our bedroom. Mark slept soundly beside me, his breathing even and peaceful. For 3 years, I'd believed our marriage was solid. We were the couple everyone envied. Successful careers, beautiful home, perfect partnership. But this message changed everything. I slipped out of bed and padded to the kitchen, my bare feet silent on the cold hardwood floors. My mind raced through possibilities. A wrong number? A joke? No, the context was too specific. Someone had been with Mark tonight. Someone he'd found amazing. I opened his phone with the password I'd always known. Our anniversary. How sentimental, how foolish of me to think that meant anything. The messages were few but damning. 2 weeks of increasingly intimate texts, meeting in secret, planning encounters around my work schedule. What made my blood run cold wasn't just the cheating, it was the planning, the careful, deliberate deception. And then I saw her name, Chloe, my best friend since college, maid of honor at our wedding, the woman I'd trusted with every secret, every fear, every dream I'd ever had. The messages revealed more than an affair. They revealed a plot. Mark was up for a promotion at his firm, senior partner. Chloe had been feeding him information about the other candidates, digging up dirt. They weren't just sleeping together, they were scheming together. My first instinct was to wake him, to scream, to throw things. But something colder, more calculating took over. They had played me for months, lying to my face while planning their future together. Why should I give them the satisfaction of seeing me break? Instead, I began to plan. The next morning, I woke before Mark and made breakfast as usual. The smell of coffee and sizzling bacon filled our kitchen. I placed the newspaper in front of him when he sat down, my hands steady as I poured his coffee. "Big presentation today?" I asked, my voice casual. He looked up, surprised. "Oh yeah, how did you remember?" "I always remember what's important to you," I said, meeting his eyes. He shifted uncomfortably. "Right. Well, I should be home late. We're celebrating afterward if I get the partnership." "I'll be waiting," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. After he left, I called in sick to work. There was planning to do, revenge to orchestrate. I started with a private investigator, best money I'd ever spend. Within 48 hours, I had photos, timestamps, a complete timeline of their affair. Motel rooms, secret lunches, even a weekend trip they'd disguised as a girl's getaway for Chloe and a business conference for Mark. The investigator also uncovered Chloe's secret, her online business selling handmade jewelry that she'd never reported to the IRS. A small operation, but profitable, and completely illegal. Next, I researched Mark's competitors for the partnership, found the strongest contender, David Chen. Discovered his wife worked at the same gallery where I'd sold a few paintings last year, a connection I could use. I spent hours crafting emails, creating fake accounts, gathering information. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to systematically dismantle their lives piece by piece. That evening, when Mark came home, I was waiting with champagne. "Congratulations, partner," I said, kissing his cheek. He grinned, relief washing over his face. "I got it." "Of course you got it," I said, pouring 2 glasses. "I always knew you would." As we toasted his success, I thought about the anonymous email I'd sent to his firm's HR department that morning, complete with evidence of him using confidential client information to gain advantage over other candidates. The email wouldn't be traced to me, but it would be investigated. His celebration would be short-lived. Later that night, in bed, Mark's phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. "Did you tell her yet?" I watched as Mark typed back, "Not yet, soon." I rolled over, pretending to be asleep, my mind already calculating my next move. They thought they were playing chess with my life. They had no idea I was about to burn down the entire board. The call came 2 days later. I was in the study, sketching out the next phase of my plan, when I heard Mark's sharp intake of breath from the living room. His voice was low, strained. "I don't understand. Yes, I can come in tomorrow. No, of course not." He hung up and stood in silence for a long moment. "Everything okay?" I called out, my pencil still moving across the page. He appeared in the doorway, his face pale. That was HR, some anonymous allegation about my presentation. They need to discuss it. My heart gave a little thrill of victory. I kept my expression concerned, standing up and walking over to him. An allegation? What kind of allegation? Something about misusing client data. It's ridiculous, he said, but his eyes darted away from mine. A competitor trying to sabotage me, probably. I put a hand on his arm, feeling the tension in his muscles. Oh, Mark, that's awful. Who would do something like that? I don't know, he said, running a hand through his hair. But I'll sort it out. It's nothing. It's not nothing, I said softly, playing the part perfectly. This is your career, your dream. Is there anything I can do? He shook his head. No, just knowing you're on my side is enough. I'm always on your side, I promised. And I was. I was on the side that was about to push him off a cliff. While he was at his tense HR meeting the next day, I turned my attention to Chloe. Her little online jewelry shop, Chloe's Creations, was her pride and joy. She posted about it constantly, a side hustle she claimed was just for fun. The PI had uncovered the truth. She was making over $60,000 a year, tax-free. It took me less than an hour to gather the necessary information. Her business name, her social media profiles with prices listed, her PayPal and Venmo handles. I drafted a detailed factual report to the IRS, attaching screenshots of her sales posts and customer testimonials. I made sure to use a public computer at a library across town, wearing gloves and a hat. I wasn't just angry, I was meticulous. Clicking submit on the form felt anticlimactic. No explosion, no dramatic confrontation, just a quiet, final click. But I knew the devastation it would cause. The fines, the back taxes, the legal fees. It wouldn't just ruin her business, it would ruin her financially. That evening, my phone rang. It was Chloe. Hey, stranger, she said, her voice a little too bright. I feel like I haven't seen you in ages. You busy tomorrow? Want to grab lunch? A test. She was testing the waters, seeing if I knew anything. I'd love that, I said, matching her cheerful tone. How about that little cafe on Elm Street, the one with the amazing pastries? Perfect. 1 o'clock? See you then. We hung up. I stared at my reflection in the dark screen of my phone. The woman looking back was a stranger, cold, focused, and smiling a smile that could cut glass. Lunch the next day was a masterclass in deception. Chloe chattered endlessly about her jewelry, about a new guy she was sort of seeing, about a client she was having trouble with at her day job. She never mentioned Mark. Not once. I listened, nodding, asking the right questions. That's so exciting about the new guy. Anyone I know? I asked, taking a sip of my water. Oh, no one important, she said, waving a dismissive hand. It's still very new. She leaned forward, her expression turning serious. How are you, really? You seem a little quiet. I gave a small, sad smile. Just tired, I guess. Mark's been so stressed with work lately. This whole partnership thing has been a lot. I let a little crack show in my facade, just enough to make her think I was clueless and concerned. Her shoulders relaxed. He'll be fine. He's brilliant. He deserves it. Yes, he does, I agreed, looking her straight in the eye. He deserves everything he has coming to him. The double meaning was lost on her. She just smiled and reached across the table, squeezing my hand. You two are so perfect. I hope I find what you guys have one day. I squeezed her hand back, my grip firm. You will, Chloe, I'm sure of it. After lunch, I made one more call. It was to Mark's mother, Carol, a sweet, traditional woman who adored me and believed her son could do no wrong. Carol, hi, I said, my voice trembling just enough to sound on the verge of tears. I'm so sorry to bother you. I didn't know who else to talk to. What is it, dear? What's wrong? It's Mark, I whispered. I think he might be seeing someone. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. No, not my Mark. He would never. I found a receipt, I lied, weaving the first thread of my web, for a hotel. And he's been so distant, so secretive with his phone. I don't want to believe it, Carol. I'm just scared. I didn't mention Chloe. Not yet. I just planted the seed of doubt in the one person Mark trusted most. Let it fester. Let her start watching him, questioning him. Let the paranoia begin. They had built their new world on a foundation of lies. I was just here to supply the dynamite. Mark didn't lose his job that day. What he got was worse. He was suspended, pending a full forensic audit of his work computer and company emails. He came home like a thunderstorm, slamming the front door so hard a picture of us on our wedding day fell off the wall. They suspended me, he seethed, his face a mottled red. He paced the living room floor, his movements jerky and agitated. Some baseless accusation from a coward, a competitor. It has to be David Chen. He's the only one with anything to gain. I was sitting on the sofa, pretending to read a magazine. I looked up, my eyes wide with manufactured sympathy. Suspended, Mark? That's terrifying. What does that mean? It means they're looking at everything. Every email, every file. It's a witch hunt. He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes desperate. You believe me, don't you? I didn't do this. I stood up and walked over to him, placing my hands on his chest. Of course I believe you, I said, my voice a soothing balm. I know you. You would never do something like that. We'll get through this. He leaned into my touch, his body trembling with rage and fear. I'm going to fight this. I'll hire a lawyer. I'm not going to let them destroy my career over nothing. As I held him, a cold, calm satisfaction settled over me. He was right. They were going to destroy his career, and I was the one holding the detonator. The next day, it was Chloe's turn to panic. I knew because she called me, her voice a high-pitched, frantic whisper. I have to see you, now, she said without even a hello. Can you meet me at the park? I'm at work, Chloe. What's wrong? Please, Anna, it's an emergency. 20 minutes later, I found her on a bench overlooking the duck pond, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. What is it? I asked, sitting down beside her. She pulled a thick, official-looking envelope from her bag and shoved it at me. Her hands were shaking. It's from the IRS. They're auditing me. For the last 3 years. My business. Anna, they know. I took the letter, scanning the dense legal text. Auditing you? But why? It's just a little hobby. That's what I thought, she cried, her voice cracking. But the letter says they received a credible and detailed tip. Someone reported me. Who would do that? Who hates me that much? I handed the letter back, my expression a perfect mask of shock and concern. I have no idea. This is horrible. Is it bad? Bad? She let out a hollow laugh. It's ruinous. The back taxes alone, plus penalties and interest. I don't have that kind of money, Anna. I could go to jail. I put my arm around her, pulling her close as she sobbed into my shoulder. I patted her back, murmuring words of comfort. It's okay. We'll figure it out. Maybe it's a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was my masterpiece. And as I held the woman who had betrayed me, I felt nothing but the quiet hum of a perfectly executed plan. That night, I decided it was time to drive a wedge between them, to make them suspicious of each other. I waited until Mark was in the shower, his phone charging on the bathroom counter. I knew the passcode. I went into his recent calls and found Chloe's number. I copied it into my own phone. The next morning, while Mark was out meeting with a lawyer, I called Chloe from a burner phone. Chloe, it's Anna, I said, my voice brittle and broken. I'd practiced it until it sounded raw with pain. Anna, what's wrong? You sound awful. I know, I choked out. I know about you and Mark. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. Don't lie to me. I snapped, letting a real edge of anger creep into my voice. He told me everything, last night. He was so guilt-ridden, he couldn't keep it in. What did he say? She whispered. He said it was a mistake, that it meant nothing. He said you were pressuring him, that you were threatening to tell me yourself if he didn't leave me. I let out a bitter sob. He said you're trying to extort him, Chloe. Is that true? Are you trying to ruin his life? No, of course not, she cried, her voice rising in panic. He's lying. It's not like that at all. He told me he was going to leave you. He said you were cold and distant, and he was unhappy. I let her words hang in the air for a moment. Is that what he told you? I asked, my voice suddenly cold, calm. Interesting, because that's not what he's telling his lawyer. I hung up before she could respond. The seed was planted. Now she would think Mark was throwing her under the bus to save his own skin. And Mark, when he inevitably heard from her, would think she was unstable and capable of anything. I spent the rest of the afternoon making more calls. To Mark's sister, a nosy, judgmental woman who loved drama. I expressed my concern about Mark's new friend at work, a woman I'd invented, who seemed to have a strange hold over him. Then I called one of our mutual friends, a gossip named Sarah. I told her I was worried about Chloe. She's just been so secretive lately, I said, and she's spending money she doesn't have. I'm scared she's gotten into some kind of trouble, maybe something illegal. Each call was a small, precise cut, but together they would bleed them dry, isolating them in a sea of suspicion and doubt. By the time I was done, the only people they would have left to turn to would be each other, and I was making sure that alliance was about to shatter into a million pieces. The first crack in their alliance appeared as a series of frantic, angry text messages on Mark's phone. I saw them when he left it unattended on the kitchen counter to take a shower. The screen lit up repeatedly with Chloe's name. You told her? You actually told her I was pressuring you? You're a coward, a liar. I can't believe you're throwing me under the bus to save your own skin. Answer me, Mark. When he got out of the shower, his face grim, I didn't have to ask. He snatched his phone, his jaw tight as he read the messages. Problems? I asked, feigning innocence. Chloe's having a meltdown, he grunted, typing back a furious reply. She thinks I'm blaming her for this HR mess. Are you? I asked, keeping my voice light. He looked up at me, his eyes flashing with irritation. Of course not. This is my problem. She's just stressed. Stressed, I thought, and about to get a lot more so. The next call came while Mark was out. It was his mother, Carol, and her voice was no longer sweet and supportive. It was sharp, laced with accusation. Anna, I need to ask you something, she began without preamble, and I need you to be honest with me. Of course, Carol. What is it? This friend of Mark's, the one you were worried about, is it someone from his office, a younger woman? I let out a weary sigh, letting the silence hang for a moment. I don't know, Carol. He says it's nothing, but he's been so secretive. His phone is always on silent. He's been working late, but when I call his office line, he's already left. I let my voice crack. I'm scared. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Oh, you poor, poor dear, she cooed, her sympathy now fully on my side. Don't you worry. I'll get to the bottom of this. Mark was raised better than this. He has a lot of explaining to do. I hung up, a small smile playing on my lips. The walls were closing in. He could feel it, even if he didn't know who was building them. Later that day, I saw the impact on Chloe. She posted a frantic, vague message on her social media. Some people you thought you could trust will believe the worst about you without a second thought, feeling betrayed. It was a public cry for help, and it was exactly what I wanted. It made her look unstable, guilty. Our mutual friend Sarah immediately commented, "Everything okay, Chloe? Call me." The trap was set. The pieces were moving exactly as I'd planned. The breaking point came 2 nights later. Mark had been drinking, nursing a glass of whiskey while staring blankly at the television. His phone buzzed. It was Chloe. He ignored it. It buzzed again and again. Finally, he answered, his voice slurred and hostile. What? I couldn't hear her words, but I could hear the shrill pitch of her voice through the phone. Mark's face grew darker. I told you to stop calling me here, he hissed. No, I'm not meeting you. This is a disaster. My whole career is on the line because of some anonymous tip, and all you can do is call me and whine? He listened for a moment, his knuckles white as he gripped the glass. I never said that, he yelled. You're crazy. You're completely unhinged. Stay away from me, Chloe. Just stay away. He slammed the phone down on the table, the sound echoing in the silent room. He didn't look at me. He just stared into his drink, a man drowning. The next day, I followed him. I told him I was going to a yoga class, but instead I parked down the street from the coffee shop where he was meeting Chloe. I watched through the window as they sat at a small table in the back. It wasn't a passionate reconciliation. It was a war. I couldn't hear their words, but I saw their faces. Chloe's was a mask of fury and hurt, her hands gesturing wildly. Mark's was cold and defensive, his jaw set. He shook his head repeatedly, pushing back from the table at one point as if to leave. She grabbed his arm, her voice rising. People at nearby tables started to stare. Then he said something that made her freeze. Her face crumpled. She let go of his arm and just stared at him, utterly defeated. He stood up, threw some cash on the table, and walked out without a backward glance. Chloe sat there for a long time, alone, staring into her empty coffee cup. The woman who had plotted with my husband, who had dreamed of a future with him, looked broken, and I felt a surge of something dark and powerful. It wasn't happiness, it was justice. When I got home, Mark was in the study, packing a box with his personal belongings from his office. He'd just gotten another call. "They found it," he said, his voice hollow. "The email, the one with the client data. It was in his deleted folder, but they recovered it. They're terminating my employment, effective immediately." He looked at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, pleading emptiness. "My career is over, Anna. Everything I've worked for, it's all gone." I walked over to him and put my arms around him. I held him as he began to shake, the sobs racking his body. I stroked his hair and whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. We'll get through this together." And as I held the man whose world I had just systematically destroyed, I finally understood. This wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. They had knocked over all the white pieces on my board, and now it was my turn. The Black King was surrounded, and checkmate was coming. The fallout was swift and brutal, a wildfire I'd started with a single well-placed match. Mark's mother, Carol, called him that evening. I put the call on speaker, pretending to be in the other room but listening to every word. "Mark David Miller," she began, her voice trembling with a mixture of rage and disappointment. "I just spoke with Sarah. She told me everything about you and Chloe." "Sarah? What are you talking about?" Mark's voice was weary, defeated. "Don't you dare lie to me," Carol shot back. "She said Anna has been worried sick for months, that you've been seeing this woman behind Anna's back. Is it true? Is that why your career is suddenly in shambles? Because you were too busy chasing tail to do your job?" "It's not like that," he mumbled. "Then what is it like?" she demanded. "Because from where I'm standing, you've thrown away your marriage, your job, and your integrity. Your father is rolling over in his grave. I am ashamed to call you my son." She hung up on him. I walked back into the living room, my face a picture of sorrow. "Was that your mom?" He just nodded, staring at the floor. He didn't even ask me to defend him. He knew it was pointless. The foundation of his life had crumbled, and he was standing in the rubble. The next day, Chloe's world imploded. The gossip mill, greased by my conversations with Sarah, was working overtime. The story was no longer just about an affair. It was a sordid tale of betrayal, greed, and instability. Chloe was painted as a gold-digging homewrecker who had tried to extort Mark, and when that failed, had somehow sabotaged his career. The IRS audit was twisted into proof of her shady, immoral character. She called me, sobbing. "My phone won't stop ringing. People are posting horrible things online. My sister called and called me a tramp. They think I ruined Mark's life. They think I'm a monster." "Who thinks that, Chloe?" I asked, my voice laced with fake concern. "Everyone. Sarah, my cousins, people I haven't talked to in years. They're saying I'm the one who sent that anonymous tip to his company out of spite." "Did you?" I asked, the question hanging in the air like poison. "No, of course not. I loved him," she wailed. "But he's telling everyone I'm crazy, that I was stalking him. He's trying to save himself by destroying me." "And is it working?" I asked quietly. Her sobs were my answer. The final confrontation happened at our front door. I was home, pretending to sort through mail, when Chloe's car screeched to a halt outside. She stormed up the walkway, her eyes red-rimmed and wild. She didn't knock. She pounded on the door with her fists. Mark opened it, his face grim. "What are you doing here? You can't be here." "I don't care," she screamed, pushing past him into the foyer. "You're ruining me. You're telling everyone I'm some kind of psychopath." "You are," he yelled back, his voice cracking with desperation. "You called my mother. You told Sarah I was cheating. You've destroyed my life." "I destroyed your life?" She laughed, a horrible, broken sound. "You told me you were leaving me. You said you were going to leave Anna and we would be together. That was the plan, Mark." "Our plan." I stepped out of the living room, holding a glass of water. "Chloe, what's going on?" They both froze, turning to look at me. The sight of me, the innocent wife, seemed to snap something in Chloe. "Ask him, Anna," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Mark. "Ask him about the motel on Route 9. Ask him about the weekend in Vermont he told you was a fishing trip. Ask him about all the times he told you he loved you while he was in my bed." Mark's face went white. He looked at me, his eyes filled with terror. "Anna, she's not in her right mind." "I'm not in my right mind?" Chloe took a step toward him, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You promised me everything. You used me to get that partnership, and when you got it, you were just going to discard me like trash." I never used you, he shouted back. This was supposed to be simple. We were supposed to be happy, but you got greedy and you got careless, and now we're both paying for it. They were no longer a team. They were two wounded animals, trapped in a corner, turning on each other with savage fury. They were confessing everything, not out of remorse, but out of a desperate need to inflict as much pain as possible. I watched them, a silent observer at the center of their self-destruction. I saw the realization dawn in their eyes as they screamed at each other. They had nothing left. No jobs, no money, no family, no friends, and now, not even each other. They had built their house of cards, and I had simply provided the breeze. "Get out," Mark said, his voice flat and empty. Chloe looked at him, then at me, a flicker of understanding in her tear-filled eyes. She looked from his defeated face to my calm, composed one, and in that moment, I think she knew. She couldn't prove it, but she knew. She turned and walked out the door without another word. The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Mark stood in the middle of the foyer, a man who had lost everything, and I, the architect of his ruin, simply took a sip of my water. The days after Chloe's final explosive visit were quiet. Mark moved through the house like a ghost, his shoulders slumped, his eyes vacant. He didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He just existed in a state of shock, a man whose entire reality had been systematically dismantled. He slept in the guest room, and we didn't speak. I gave him 3 days. 3 days to drown in the ruins of his own making. On the 4th morning, a process server knocked on the door. I watched from the window as Mark accepted the thick manila envelope. He didn't have to open it to know what it was. He just looked at it, then looked up at the window, and his face was a mask of utter defeat. He came inside, dropping the unopened divorce papers on the kitchen table. "You're not even going to talk to me about it?" "What is there to talk about, Mark?" I replied, my voice calm and level. "You and Chloe plotted behind my back. You used confidential information to steal a promotion. You betrayed me in every possible way. My lawyer has been very thorough." He finally tore open the envelope. His eyes scanned the pages, widening as he read the terms. I was asking for everything. The house, our joint savings, my car, even his prized vintage guitar collection. My leverage was ironclad, the evidence of his corporate misconduct, which I'd happily hand over to his former firm if he contested the divorce. He would not only be jobless, he would be unemployable in his industry. "You can't do this," he whispered, the fight finally gone from his voice. "You can't take everything." "I'm not taking everything," I said, walking over to the table. "I'm taking back what's mine. I'm taking the life you built on a foundation of lies. You get to keep the clothes on your back and the debt in your name. It's more than you deserve." He sank into a chair, his head in his hands. He didn't argue. He didn't negotiate. He just signed the papers. It was the surrender of a man who had already lost the war. A week later, I turned my attention to Chloe. The gossip had started to die down, and I saw she was trying to rebuild, posting sad, inspirational quotes about overcoming adversity. It was pathetic, and it was time for the final checkmate. I went into my archived text messages to the screenshot I had taken the night I discovered the affair. It was a simple exchange between Mark and Chloe. "Mark, she doesn't suspect a thing. See you tomorrow. I can't wait." I posted it to my private Instagram story. No caption, no explanation, just the raw, undeniable truth. I knew it would take less than 5 minutes for someone to screenshot it and send it to the very people Chloe was trying to win back. It was the final piece of evidence, the digital nail in her coffin. There would be no coming back from this. My final act was to sell the house. I couldn't live there, in the echo of their betrayal. The day the movers came, I stood in the empty living room, the sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. The space was hollow, just like me. I had won. I had taken their jobs, their money, their families, their friends, their reputations. I had delivered the hollow, empty ache I had promised them. I had watched their worlds burn, and I had felt the satisfying warmth of the flames. But as I stood there, alone in the silence, I realized something. In my quest to destroy their world, I had burned my own to the ground. I had become the architect of my own loneliness. The game was over. The board was clear, and the Black King, the one who had orchestrated it all, was standing alone. I had taken everything they loved, and in the end, all I had left was the victory. And the victory felt just as hollow and empty as I had intended their lives to be. It was, I realized, the most perfect revenge of all.